format of working with IRBs.
I'm realizing that you may have lost some interested participants. That maybe as soon as you said, I joined the IRB and have been on it for 5 years, that you may have lost some people. But the one thing that I keep coming to is that people who become successful in MFT in research, that they have to do things that maybe they didn't expect that they would do.
Absolutely.
In order to be successful in their research. And so joining the IRB is yet another example of investing and acquiring new skill sets and being in on certain conversations so that you can become a more effective researcher.
Well, it's the university-community partnership of this type of work. I mean, a lot of times people can't find me because I'm not in my office. Mm-hmm. But that's because I'm over at the Department of Indian Work, or I'm over at the Job Corps, or I'm over in a community event in one of the Hmong clans. And that's the most appropriate place for most of this work to happen. I mean, paying patients to come to my office and take a survey isn't how this research works. Yeah. But then on the flip side of that, understanding my institution in terms of the IRB is an example where I need to further advance my understanding on how to make that university-community partnership work. And the IRB was a big example of that, because when I first came in, they weren't familiar with this type of work at all.
Right. So the other thing, I mean, that's one option, join the IRB and kind of work from the inside like that. The other option could be really get to know your departmental liaison and bring them along so they can be your advocate. Because joining the IRB is not always an option, obviously.
No, and I have a couple of other colleagues that were starting that didn't, right. And they did exactly that. You know, either talking with or learning. I mean, it's all public. You know, in terms of minutes, in terms of where the IRBs have been and where they're going with conversations regarding this. IRBs are happy to have you just come visit with them. You know, to set up a meeting with you know, the appropriate person there, depending on the content of what you're doing, to say, this is what I'm thinking. Can we talk about it before I submit my stuff to kind of this black box, and then have to wait and find out what you say.
So Tai, in your experience, let's move from the studies, the ongoing nature of the study, and talk about the results. But also aware of the fact that you may be ready to write up some results of the study, and it could still be ongoing. Like you said, you're in your 7th year with the Santa, the smoking project. So, are there journals that have been less receptive to this methodology, or are they typically receptive, and you kind of have to bring the reader along? You have to let the reader know what you're doing.
It's a moving target also.
Yeah.
I think that this type of research was a lot more difficult to publish 10 years ago than it is now.
Yeah.
The journal called Action Research, for example, Hilary Bradbury is the editor for that, and she's dynamite, and it's across a variety of different fields. It's not just mental health or even physical health. And that's just a joy to read, and it functions as a cross-disciplinary place that's very well regarded, and SAGE is the backer behind that. There's a number of journals that are more field-specific that are starting. And then even backing up, journals that have tended to regard qualitative research were oftentimes first, because especially as this was going, it was talking about the experience of putting this group together, or what learnings were happening and what interventions were starting, but we haven't evaluated them yet.
Yeah.
So kind of that inductive-deductive cycle,
right.
with the inductive cycle being the more qualitative, that's where it started to hit. But now that a lot of projects have, and really skill in doing this kind of work has advanced across the field, we're able then to get into more journals that previously wouldn't have done this. I'm just trying to think. Well, JMFT, for example, Family Relations and MFT have started to look at this type of stuff. Where 10 years ago, I'd have to go back and look, but I'm pretty confident that
less
there's
receptive.
far few in between.
Yeah.
There's other journals like the Journal of Qualitative Health Research. which has been very receptive, to this type of work. So I think that the answer is yes, and in 10 more years it might even be
even more
mainstream.
So. Yeah. So there may be people out there who want to classify. We want to put things in boxes every now and then. So action research methods is a qualitative research method. It's in that qualitative tradition. It's a quantitative, or it's a mixed method, or it can really be a variety of either of those. It doesn't have to be in any one box.
I would say now, today, it doesn't have to be in any one of those boxes. 10 years ago, I would say the vast majority of folks would have told you it was qualitative.
Yeah.
Really, in order to get the regard from colleagues or from other fields, I think that the emphasis on quantitative research is still with us, very alive and well. And I think that one of the reasons that CBPR action research has advanced and gained its credibility is because there's been an increasing number of studies that have looked at systematic quantitative findings and interventions, or interventions that are connected to quantitative findings, to say and to answer, does this work? Because otherwise, it's got a lot of face validity. Get everybody together and tap everybody's knowledge and wisdom and expertise, and it makes sense. That's never been a problem for this type of work. But the question on does it work is best answered with the numbers. If you're going to convince somebody that's not convinced yet. Once people are convinced, I think that they're a lot more receptive to the anecdotes or to the qualitative accounts and stories. But with a lot of my colleagues that at first weren't receptive to this, it was especially with the American Indian Project and the Smoking Project, as we started getting quantitative data confirming change, that they said, tell me more.
So maybe there's something to this, yeah. Okay, so probably should wrap up about here, but Tai, anything, words of wisdom for people that want to go and do this kind of research?
I think that, in my own experience, when I finished my bachelor's degree, I thought I was the bomb. I thought I knew everything. And my master's degree got me a little bit more shaky, and when I finished my PhD, I realized
I know nothing.
that I didn't know much. And that was a real joy for me, because, the more that you learn, the more you realize how much more there is to learn, if that makes sense. And really having this curiosity and this humbleness about that, I think, is key, because as we connect with patients, or as we connect with families or the communities that we're positioned in, we do have something to contribute. Don't go native, again, but having that curiosity and saying, tell me, teach me, let's learn this together, let's figure this out together, can be so energizing. And I think that if we can stay humble along the way, that we're never going to get done learning. And to me, that's the joy and really the driver of my investment in this work.
Okay, so humility as a research virtue.
Yeah, absolutely, because a lot of times, it's like reading a book about how to ride a bike. You can read a bunch of journal articles about how to do action research, but it's messy, and you get into these communities, and you're going to try things that don't work, or you're going to go down a tangent that really you got to kind of back up from, and you got to start over. A lot of times you go back to the drawing board, and that can be frustrating on one hand, or it can be exciting because you've learned something. And really what you're going to do now is going to be even more relevant and more driven by what's going on, or the nuances of what's going on that you wouldn't have gotten if you had just madly charged through because you were at the PhD.
Yeah. All right.
So.
Tai Mendenhall, Action Research Methods. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me.